Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Dai Manuel, a lifestyle business mentor and high performance life coach who's here to help you up level in all areas of your life. Dai is an award winning digital thought leader and author, distinguished Toastmaster and TEDx speaker, former partner and chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar retail company. He understands the struggle of trying to balance it all while keeping your health and happiness a priority. He models his work based on 5 F's: fitness, family, faith, and finances, with an overarching roof of fun built on a rock solid foundation of health. So get ready for some nuggets of wisdom and inspiration to take action to be your best self. Di, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate being here. This is awesome and talking about lots of my favorite things, and obviously entrepreneurship
Yes.
being one of those. So, yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to dive in. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you're doing now.
Geez, I was going to say an existential question just to start us off. Let's no, but I think it's a great question. It's interesting because it's a question I don't think a lot of us create space for ourselves to, well, really to ask ourselves or to reflect on, right? I mean, it's amazing. We're always, as entrepreneurs, and I, at least, not to make this sound like a cliche, but I feel it's like that. The more conversations I have with other entrepreneurs is that, we have a tendency to just hurry up and get on to the next thing,
Hmm.
rather than
Yeah.
reflect and celebrate on the good things that we have accomplished along the way. And so in asking that question, thank you for the opportunity to sort of backtrack a little bit. And, I didn't come to entrepreneurship naturally. It was sort of one of those things where I found myself in a situation where it just happened. And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of us entrepreneurs have similar origin
Yeah,
stories.
I can relate.
Yeah, and sometimes it comes from a necessity or just becoming aware that there's a problem that we have a unique solution to, or a perspective on, or a way to serve or support people
Hmm.
through something. And you know, if I think back to one of my first challenges which brought me to the fitness industry many, many moons ago, to date myself, I'm on my 45th lap around the sun right now. And, it was like 30 years ago. I was at I'd say one of my most challenging parts of my life. At age 15, I was classified as morbidly obese and very, very overweight,
Wow.
unhealthy, all the cliches and the stereotypes that come with somebody in that person. When that person is at that state of unhealth, like I was then, it's, as much as it's a cliche or stereotype, it's rather accurate. I was very isolated, very depressed, very withdrawn, dealing with a lot of social anxiety. And I learned to self-medicate with food, movies, and video games. So
Hmm.
dopamine and sugar rushes, right? So it was that was
Yeah.
my go-to. And things got really hard, and eventually it got to a place where I was more afraid of not changing than of changing. And I think that's the important
Mm.
piece to note. I think for any of us on entrepreneurial journeys, we find ourselves at periods in our life where, we're more afraid of not changing than the prospect of the unknown of change. And it's a really weird place to get. It's like, no, I'm more afraid of staying as
Yeah.
I am right now, and than I am of entertaining doing something completely different. And so at 15, I encountered that place and made some changes that took over 2 years to realize. And in that process, I learned a lot, discovered a lot of stuff about myself, but ultimately sparked a bug with the passion for fitness and also helping others navigate those physical and mental changes themselves. And that sort of set my trajectory in motion. And in my early 20s, I had the opportunity to start in on fitness equipment retail. So not being a personal
Mm.
trainer anymore, but rather now supplying people with equipment solutions, supplements, accessories, apparel. And I loved it. I loved it because it was my first time being in a performance based pay structure. Where the more people I can
Yeah.
help get healthy and fit, the more money I make. I was like,
Hmm.
really, really, is this how it works? I was like, this is kind of cool. And it was my first time ever being in a commission environment, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is like not just hours for dollars anymore. This is where I can
Yeah.
really leverage power of connections and community, but also knowledge and growing my own wisdom and knowledge with serving others. And year after year, I kept chasing impact. And as I was chasing impact, my income went up. Funny how that
Hmm.
works at times. and And fast forward, lots of changes have happened over those last 20 years in my entrepreneurial journey. And I exited out of that business quite a while ago. I'd say about, gosh, 6 years ago now, and started down my own personal passion projects, which are, I build men's communities, but I also coach and mentor a number of people in both business, but also in life. Tends to be the two things
Mhm.
always, they work synergistically, right? And you
Yeah.
can't work on one without working on the other, and vice versa. So I spend a
Yeah.
lot of time doing that and speaking and just connecting with really cool people and communities like your own. Like it's really cool. That's where I feel myself very fortunate today, because I got two teenage girls as well, and they are my life, and my wife and I have been dating now for over 20 years, and so life is very
Mhm.
full. You know.
Well, that's an incredible journey. It sounds like you had a sort of a winding path to where you are now,
Oh
which
yeah.
is amazing. And I resonate so much with what you said, right? Of I was more afraid of not changing than of changing, cuz and I think that that becomes that tipping point where it's
Yes.
like you're finally ready to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
Like you might be stuck in your job, hating it, wanting to make a change, but you don't actually want to make a change cuz you're scared, but then there just becomes a day where you're more afraid of what will happen if you don't make that change.
That's
And that's
exactly
really
right.
what it was for me, cuz I was like I can live with trying this entrepreneurship thing and failing at it and going back to get another job because really that's the worst case
That's
scenario.
right.
But I can't live with never trying and
Yeah.
having to get to the end of my life and look back and just regret it and wonder, like, what if I had made that jump? And that's always people ask me, like, how did you overcome that fear and quit your job? And I'm like, it's not really that I overcame the fear. I was scared, but I was more scared
Yeah.
of if I didn't do it.
That's right. I love hearing you say that, Lindsay, because I think when we really reflect on some of those most significant periods of change in our life, and we all have it, like every single person I know and I ever meet, at a period in their life, they've been a champion of change for their own life. Like they have, they've
Mhm.
had to champion the change itself that they were navigating. Otherwise, they would have never made it through it, and achieved the change. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit that we have
Yeah.
this natural ability to be resilient, and it's in our DNA. It's in our DNA. It's hardwired in us as a species, because we
Yeah.
do. We navigate hard stuff in the millennia that we've expanded across this planet, to 8 billion strong. My climate change friends say we're too resilient. We're,
Yeah.
we're doing a great job on population and using resources. But regardless, we are resilient through amazingly difficult things. And these
Yeah.
last couple of years, they've been nothing short of other past, trials and tribulations we've had to navigate as a species. And we're going to get through it, and we're going to come out the other side, and things will change. They'll adapt. They'll be different, but so life goes on, and I think when we start to
Mhm.
see our own version of that play out day in, day out, we start to be more active participants rather than feeling like, oh, it just happens. Stuff's just happening to me, right? Because it's really
Yeah.
easy to get to that place where we just feel like, oh my God, it doesn't matter what I do. It's just like this, it just keeps happening. It just keeps happening, and we call it dumb luck. We call it the universe. We call it destiny. I mean, I just call it, living your life. It's
Yeah.
just the unknown is going to happen, and there's sometimes known that's going to happen, but we have to put ourselves in certain situations or into motion to at least be getting closer towards a goal that maybe we've identified that is important to us, right?
Mhm.
And as I said, it's simply direction. And when we make a choice, right, that we want something, that just gives us direction. It doesn't actually give us the solution, nor does it give us necessarily the path to get to where we want to get to, but at least gets us started.
Yeah.
And I think that is also a challenging part, because we know that once we make a commitment or a choice, well, does this mean we're starting on a journey? Okay, well, here goes,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of unknown with that, isn't there? Like Lindsay, with your own, like quitting your job,
Yeah.
right? Your career.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have it all figured out when you decided to quit? Did you have a full
I
plan in
had
front of you?
I had almost nothing figured out when I quit.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Go into that.
I hired my first business coach, I think
Mhm.
the day after I put in my 2 weeks at
Yeah.
my job, like,
Awesome.
because I knew that I had no idea what I was doing, but I had made that decision that I was going to figure it out and go on that journey
Yeah.
that I'm still on. And
Yeah.
here we are.
It's amazing. It's amazing though, right? Like, is there, now let me ask you this, is there anything that you've regretted by making that decision?
No, I mean, there's things I probably would have done differently in the
Yeah.
beginning of my business, but
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets about quitting my job or the way that I did that and just kind of leapt into entrepreneurship. I think that was the right path for me for sure.
I love it.
Maybe not for everyone, but definitely for me.
Well, I think you hint on something, Lindsay, because when you talk and you brought in the vernacular, the word regret, right? Like this idea of
Hmm.
I couldn't live with the idea of looking back, at a ripe old age someday, maybe
Yeah.
we'll live to be 120 plus, right? We'll be looking back and be like, yeah, I remember that time I had that idea back in my 20s to go out on my own and do my own business. Like, gosh, I really wish I did that. Now that's, you've identified
Hmm.
that's a regret you aren't comfortable having.
Yeah.
And as such, you've chosen to do the opposite. And I think there's much to be learned through this process. And what I mean by that is you're very astute that you came to that on your own, because uh,
Hmm.
I don't think all of us have that. It's not so
No.
we don't discover it quite so easily, or we're not easily making the commitment. I know for myself, when it comes to regret, I sort of had things reframed for me a number of years ago when my father was uh, when my family and I had the opportunity to spend the last 6 months of his life with him, during that sort of end of
Hmm.
life process, while he was, losing his battle with pancreatic cancer. And it was interesting because I had literally just left my former career of 17 years, not really having a plan, or my wife and I and my kids had no idea where we were going next. We just decided to start traveling and figure things out as we go. And, it was about 18 months into the travels that my father, got the news that the cancer was back, and there was no, uh, there was no fighting it. It was just a matter of time. But
Hmm.
because we had set in motion some of those choices, it gave us the opportunity to go back and spend that time with him during that final end of life. And during that time,
Yeah.
and sorry, it's a long about way of just communicating to you what's something very important that I think anybody that's listening or watching this today, if you want to dive into this, I think it can be very empowering as far as creating direction in life. And there's a woman by the name of Bronnie Ware that I came across when I was just working through my grief, and just trying to reconcile that really that transitionary period of going from having a father to not having a father. It's a trying period for anyone to go through with any parent or close friend. And I came across this woman by the name of Bronnie Ware, and she was an RN out of Australia. Now, she wrote an incredible book called The Five Regrets of the Dying. And
Hmm.
what's super empowering of this, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, Lindsay, but what she did was she has this great relationship, this bedside manner with these end of life patients of all different backgrounds, different demographics, different socioeconomic backgrounds, like just really different cultural backgrounds, but at the end of the day, they're all at that point in life where it's end of life. And all you're trying to do at that point, I mean, I remember what it was like with my dad in the hospice for those last 7 to 10 days. It was just trying to keep him comfortable, right? Trying to
Yeah.
minimize pain and discomfort. And so here she is supporting these people, and starts to ask them, in conversation, a question. And the question is there anything that you regret not doing with your life? So to give it context, you get people at end of life now. All they're doing is lying in
Hmm.
bed and quite frankly, just spending some time until they're here no longer. And so you can imagine how that thought process and that reflection period must be. It must be so intense.
Yeah.
And what was super interesting was, of all the people she asked and surveyed this question, all of them had at least one, if not five, of the same regrets. Now, I mean, this isn't coincidence anymore. It's not just happenstance. There's something to be
Hmm.
learned by this. And these five regrets, one of the ones that always jump out at me is, I wish I'd lived the life I wanted to live, not the life others expected of me.
Yeah.
And I find us as entrepreneurs, that is one that we get trapped in. Or the other one is, I wish
Hmm.
I hadn't worked so hard. I
Yeah.
wish I'd allowed myself to be happier. That implies that happiness is a choice and that we can choose to be happy, and
Hmm.
and so there's so many of these. I wish I'd stayed in closer connection with friends and family, like these are very simple. They're accessible. They don't cost money, but they do take
Yeah.
energy and intentionality. And I think it's important to note these things, because
Yeah.
again, we only get one, right? We got one go at this.
Yeah.
Well, maybe more, but I mean, it depends on what religious background you have. But regardless, if we just look at the facts as it stands right now, we know for sure we got one go at this. And it's like,
Mhm.
so what do we choose to do with that one go, right? And what do we not want to regret whenever we get to that end of life period?
Yeah,
Um,
it's so powerful, and I can link that book in the show notes. I haven't read the book, but I have read articles online that were
right.
basically summarizing it, and I think, you know, time
Mm,
is so precious. Like you said, we only have one shot at this and you can't go back. It's the only thing that we can never get back. You can make
that's
more
right.
money, you can't create more time in your life. And so I don't know what it was, honestly, that had me thinking that far ahead at 23 years old, but I was like, I cannot keep doing this. Like there has to be more to life than getting up and doing the 9 to 5 and going to this job and doing something that feels so mundane and unfulfilling. There's got to be more here. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of times it takes some type of tragedy or someone
Mhm.
close to us dying. Or I mean, I've talked to so many people who, have applied to work with me or just reached out to me. I remember one girl when I asked her, like, why is it that you're wanting to make a change? And she said, I forget where her family was located, but her family, their like everything they had was destroyed in a natural disaster.
Mm,
And she was like, it just put things into perspective for me,
yeah.
about like how little material things really matter. And
Mhm.
like, there's so many things that are more important and so many things I want to do while I'm here. And life is so fleeting. And it really is. And it's like, I don't want to be, I don't know what the word is, but it's like, yes, there's, a time for like saving up money and thinking about the future. But then on the other hand, it's also like there is a chance that you might not be here tomorrow or next week. And like, are you going to be happy with how you're spending your days now? And I just believe there's ways to, make money while also doing something you love. And I think I just can't imagine spending 40 plus years in a career that feels unfulfilling for me.
Mm,
And then looking back on my life, it's like, what was I even doing that for?
yeah. No, it's. I love how you just, you paraphrase that because I think it is important to take note, like personal stock of what are things that by doing I know I'll never regret doing them. It's kind of
Yeah.
flipping the switch a little bit because we're in avoidance of doing things that we may regret, but it's like, well, what are the things that I will never regret doing? Sort of to
Mhm.
take a more kind of like a proactive approach. It's like, because it also creates a lot of intentionality, right? It's like I can intend or I
Yeah.
can choose to do more of these things because I know it's not things that I'm ever going to regret. And actually, it's in alignment with things that I want to achieve or accomplish or do more of, or the kind of person I want to be, the kind of father, as a man who identifies as a man, obviously, when I'm sharing this kind of, I'm talking from
Mhm.
my own perspective, right? Like those are some of the questions that went through my head just over 10 years ago, and it's
Yeah.
interesting when you get really clear on certain things that you'll always regret doing versus the things that you'll never regret. And as an example, with some of my clients, it's like, I'll encourage them to go for a workout or I'll go for a walk or to eat a big healthy salad, something that has a
Mhm.
kaleidoscope of colors on it, of fresh vegetables, and on top you put some sort of lean protein. I mean, if you're a vegan, go for some tofu or something, and if you're a meatitarian, well, I have some lean chicken or some fish on there, right? Like either way, build yourself this beautiful salad. And when I invite them to do this, I've never had someone message me after the fact and say, Di, you asked me to
Yeah.
make that salad for lunch today. I really regret eating that. Like I've never had a
Yeah.
client say that. I've never had them say to me, Di, I really regret the workout you asked me to do today. I
Mhm.
really regret going for that walk today. I really regret calling my mom and having that conversation with her today. Like these are
Yeah.
things that we don't typically regret. So why not fill life with more of those?
Yeah, I think too,
Yeah.
I know there's that saying, or I don't know if it's an actual like scientific thing that has been proven, but that you regret what you don't do more than the things that you did do.
Mm.
And I think it goes back to what you were saying about how resilient we are
Mm-hmm.
naturally. Like you said, it's in our DNA. And so
Yeah.
even though we try something and in our minds we think, oh, if I try this and it doesn't work, I'm going to regret it. It's going to be the worst thing ever. But then when you're actually in it, you realize it's really not that bad.
That's right.
And you realize how resilient you are. And
Yeah.
that's why I think the regret of something that you didn't do can be so much stronger than the regret of something that you did do and it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, because
Because
there's
either
that
way, you're
unknown.
also learning something,
Yeah.
even if my business blows up and I have to go back and get a job for whatever reason that I don't anticipate happening. I have learned so much and like I'm so much better off because I know I built up all these skills and I would move into a career I actually enjoyed at the very least, and it's just been such a fun journey. So
Mm-hmm.
like even if it doesn't work out, there's so much to gain from just trying.
Yes, you're right. That's where we learn, it's where we grow. It's where
Yeah.
we adapt, we evolve. And yeah, there's going to be challenges that pop up. But remember, the challenges would have allowed humans to become so darn resilient. Like you don't have to go
Mhm.
and study Darwinism to understand this. But
Yeah.
start looking at evolution. It's like, geez, stress, lots of it, and
Mhm.
through that stressful period, stressful times, it's amazing how we've evolved, and come out on the other side better versions, or improved
Mhm.
versions. And I think we're quick to forget that because we do get caught up in our own lives, our own moments in time, these
Yeah.
highly stressful moments and anxious moments. And it's amazing. It's almost like a horse with blinders on, right? Like we can't see anything other than what we're challenged by. And yet we
Mhm.
navigate it as best we can. Sometimes we'll ask for help. We get help from those
Yeah.
people around us and we get our way through that. But then we turn around, we look back and we're like, wow, I just worked through that. And we have a sense of
Mhm.
accomplishment. But then we're like, okay, next. It's
Yeah.
like without really reflecting on like, well, what did I learn from that? Like if I encounter something like that again, what am I prepared to do so it's not as challenging as it was last time? Because the crazy thing is,
Mhm.
as soon as we get through it, it never seems as bad as it was when we were in it. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. It's like, oh, that wasn't that bad, and it's like it
Yeah.
reframes us, right? And that's what life does for us. Like I mean, I think it's funny now because I mean, it sounds like a cliche in itself, but at 45, I often think back because my kids are now closer to 20 than I am. So
Mhm.
based on that, I often think it's like, as I was approaching 20, like my two daughters are, I'm like, what would have been some things I would have really liked to have known or have done differently if I had to go back? And so now coming from that
Mhm.
place and being able to have those conversations with them to some extent, it's been really, for me, cathartic because it
Yeah.
allows me to reflect on some of the challenges I've worked through and how I got through those, but also it makes me feel really good that I'm able to, you know, instill in them maybe a little bit of wisdom. Again, maybe
Mm.
it's more knowledge. Wisdom comes through application of knowledge. So we'll just say it's knowledge for now, and we'll see what we do with it, right? But at least it makes me feel like fulfilled that I'm doing my part. So
Yeah. Would
yeah,
you be open to sharing some of those things
sure.
that you wish you had known or wish you had done differently in your 20s?
Well, yeah, sure, Lindsay. I mean, some of the biggest ones, and this sort of steps off into, I did a TEDx talk last year, and I talked about vulnerability being a human thing, and
Mm.
that more so like vulnerability is I believe it's a skill like any other skill that can be developed. But the problem is most of our relationships with the understanding around what vulnerable means, it's a negative connotation, right? Like we don't necessarily have
Yeah.
warm and fuzzy feelings about being vulnerable. Oh, vulnerable is a good thing, like now, even though there's a lot of people out there speaking to the power of vulnerability and how it can be something positive, I think most of our own personal experience is on the negative side. So we have this sort of unconditioned, or I should say, this conditioned bias that we're trying to overcome. And that's fair. I mean, that's like a lot of things in life, right? Like we have these certain
Mhm.
conditioned belief systems. And if we ever came to a point where we could actually say, why do I believe what I believe? We'll probably actually get to the point where we're like, well, it's what I read, it's what I saw online, it's what my friends told me, it's what my parents told me. It's like, well, but do I really know why I believe that? Have I ever had any
Yeah.
personal experience? And when you really come to that awareness, it's like, whoa, hello,
Yeah.
why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, why do I believe this? And I think back to my 20s, I was very quick to take things at face value. You
Mm.
know, I was very quick to get around certain peers, friends. I'll go as far as to say at that time. And find myself getting caught up with what everybody else was doing, wanting to fit in, wanting to be
Yeah.
accepted. I've done a lot of reflecting on this, and going through that morbidly obese period of my life, and that isolation that I had during that period. People often say, well, what was your main motivation for getting healthy? And I was like, well, one, I didn't want to feel the way I was feeling anymore. I didn't want the smallest of things in life
Yeah.
to be painful or hard. And I didn't want to imagine what life could be at 20 if I didn't make any changes, because that's what I was thinking of, right? And I was like, I can't deal with that. I got to run away, run away from that as far as
Mhm.
possible. Well, I got to change things. And, through those 2 years, I changed, and I did gain some confidence, but not really. Because my main motivation was I wanted a girlfriend. I wanted somebody to want
Mhm.
me, that's really what it boiled down to. I was 15 and almost 17. And during those 2 years, that's all I wanted. I wanted to be wanted,
Mhm.
and go as far as to say I wanted to be loved, right? And then when I got into my 20s, because of making those changes, and I moved across the country from Toronto to Vancouver because I was trying to run away from my past. I grew up in a small
Yeah.
town, so everybody remembered me as the morbidly obese fat kid. But even though I changed all that, that stigma it still remains. So I
Mhm.
was like, I got to get away. I got to start fresh. And I'm sure there's people out there that can
Yeah.
relate to that.
Yeah.
And so I moved across the country, at 18 and almost 19. And that's what I set out to do, was to sort of rediscover who I was, and start anew. But I realized I had a lot of unconditioned and conditioned beliefs about myself
Mhm.
from that teenager year. And as such, I learned ways to navigate some of that anxiety and depression and stress that I was feeling, and unsureness. And I learned to deal with it with alcohol. And
Mm.
that became a really big habit in my life up until my early 30s. So for about 13, 14 years, alcohol was my way. It wasn't food anymore. It wasn't video games. It was
Yeah.
now alcohol, and times narcotics, and even though I was in the fitness space, the health industry, and you can see this
Mhm.
created a lot of that doubt for myself, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of guilt
Yeah.
and shame. And it was a bit of an endless cycle, right? And long and short of it, if I can go back and tell my kids anything, it's like, you just, my biggest thing I like to say to my kids is, just do what you feel is right. Like, really listening to ourselves, that gut instinct we
Mhm.
all have. We do know what's right and what's wrong. Like, we do. I remember all those times making those decisions. Like, people often will say, like, oh, well, were you an alcoholic? I was like, no, I wasn't. I chose. I was aware of my choice every single time.
Yeah.
I never felt like I was having to do this because, the alcohol was holding a gun to my head saying, drink me. Like, that was never the case.
Mhm.
It was me making a choice. And I think, it's that ability to get vulnerable, to be able to be okay with asking for help. Had I been able to do that earlier on, I think things would have been very different. Now, I don't regret it. Please note that I don't regret
Mhm.
it, because it opened up a whole bunch of cool things that have happened over the last 10 years that would have never happened had I not gone through that trial and
Yeah.
tribulation period, right? And so yeah, that's one thing I like to share with my kids is, like, just remember, like, feel into your gut instinct. You know what's right, and do what's right.
Mm.
Do the thing that you won't regret tomorrow morning when you wake up. Like,
Yeah.
lean into that. And if you do more of that, you can't be misguided. You're gonna do great. You'll be okay. And but again, I remember how I was at 20, and if my 40 plus old parent had said that to
Yeah.
me, I'd be like, whatever, dad, whatever, mom, like, so, to whatever, to each his own. Maybe it's just the wishful thinking of an older man, like, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I think it's also an example of how when we're not addressing what's really going on under the surface, like maybe, you overcame obesity, but then the thing just switched from food to alcohol. So
Exactly.
like until we're really getting vulnerable and look like vulnerable with ourselves even,
Yeah.
and looking at what's going on, why do I feel like I need to lean on food or alcohol or drugs or like whatever this thing is, like what am I hiding from?
Yeah.
What am I afraid of facing within myself? Um, I think that's such good advice and just a really important thing to remind ourselves of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, we all deal with our challenges and our the obstacles that we encounter in life differently, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes I think back to how I navigated some of those challenges, and it wasn't the healthiest of ways, but it was what was role
Mhm.
modeled to me. Like
Mm.
if I'm absolutely fair, and I'll give myself a little bit of grace, is I think back to those times, and I remember who my association was, the closest relationships that I held at that time, and they were all doing it. All my male friends of that period were doing
Yeah.
it. Like that was the way we handled things. Oh, let's go burn, go party tonight. Let's just burn off some steam, like that was just this burn off some stress, and whatever. Just, I mean, it
Mhm.
could be any little thing, but it was just like, let's go out and drink. Let's go to the bar. Let's go watch UFC. Let's go play a round of golf, but just so we can hurry up the round and hang out the 19th, and it was just this sort of cycle. But that's what everybody was doing. So I just was following the herd, and,
Yeah.
and that was tough too, right? Because at times you're just sort of left thinking, oh, I don't know of any other ways because no other ways are being shown to me, and
Yeah.
and that can be really hard too when we find ourselves stuck and feeling like nobody around us gets us, and we might feel like we want to make a change, but then we don't have support around us
Mm.
wanting us to change. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
we voice to some of our closest friends sometimes that we want to change, even family. It's like, I
Yeah.
really want to make some changes, and we go to them and we open up and we expect them to be really supportive, and then when they're not, we're like, oh man, what's going on, and we feel really alone and really like, well, at times pissed off, like, yeah, you
Yeah.
should be supporting me, mom, like what's going on, unfortunately for me, my mom was always very supportive. My dad
Mhm.
was, he was just very logical, very very
Yeah.
stoic, and he always liked to use logic and rationalize things. And meanwhile, my mom was the opposite, super emotional, right? And
Yeah.
always about chasing life, be happy, and I love that too. So I ended up getting a bit of both, and which can create some internal conflict at times, but
That
it's all good.
sounds a
Yeah,
whole lot like
yeah,
me and
yeah.
my boyfriend right now. So
Oh, how so? Explain. What do you mean?
He's just a very logical
Mm-hmm.
and practical person, I would say. Funny thing is, so I used to be an accountant. That's what I did before I quit my job.
Mm-hmm.
He is an accountant and he loves being an accountant.
Yeah.
I hated it. But I think that's just the way his brain is wired, is
Yeah.
like logic and numbers and like practical things. And I'm just like, well, if it doesn't feel good for me, I'm not gonna do it just because it's gonna make me money. And he doesn't understand that. But it's fine. It works. He provides the structure to my illogical business decisions that I make.
I love it. Well, it sounds like a good partnership, anyways, and nice yin and yang, right? You get those opposing
Yeah,
ways.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So I know that you kind of structure your work around those five F's, which I
Mm.
mentioned in the beginning. And I'm curious why each of those are important to you and why those are kind of the five key things that you like to focus on.
Well, I think for all of us, we like to have a bit of structure, because structure gives us direction, but it also gives us clarity and confidence, and that's the nice thing. And when I say structure, that can be interchanged with a blueprint, a plan, a process,
Hmm.
have some sort of semblance of order, because that gives us confidence, right? Like it's like, I mean, nowadays, we have our phones and they have GPSs in it, so we plug in a destination we want
Yeah.
to get to, it knows where we're at, and it plots the course and makes recommendations. And there's something to that. I mean, if we had to go back to maps again, I think we'd have a lot of very confused and lost people. Like that is one type of technology I think would be awful for us to regress back to. Like I remember my parents getting pissed off in the car ride during road trips, and my dad and my mom yelling at each other because the maps out stretched out in the front seat. I remember that. Like, and thank goodness we don't have that. I imagine we have a lot more marriages succeeding nowadays as a result of GPS.
Yeah.
But that being said, that when we have clarity of direction, we can start to build some confidence. because we feel sure of our footing and that we are, at least tracking in the right direction. The neat thing is as we build that confidence by doing certain things that we've identified are, this is probably a good idea to get us a little bit closer, that too builds more confidence as well as brings
Mhm.
more clarity. And so we have this sort of clarity to confidence to action, back to confidence, back to clarity. It's sort of this ebb and flow between those bookends, if you will. And everyone, loves metaphors. I don't, or similes, like, and I'm a big fan of metaphors because it helps take complicated ideas and simplify things for people to get right away, but also to get for themselves. More importantly, that clarity we need to better understand ourselves and what motivates us, what inspires us, and what's going to get us
Mhm.
moving and keep us moving. And for me, the 5S was simply a way of me identifying some of my key values. But I use imagine a home. I want people just to close your eyes. You imagine a home. And this is like going back to kindergarten and drawing a house, right? We'd go square,
Yeah.
triangle, right? On ground. So, but this post and lintel design, you've got four walls and you've got a roof and a foundation. If you imagine your life and you are the architect of your life or your home of which you're building your life,
Mhm.
foundation is key. Whatever you build for your
Yeah.
life, if that foundation isn't rock solid, yikes, earthquakes, tornadoes,
Mhm.
forest fires. I mean, there's lots of elements that can come in and challenge this life that you're engineering. But if you have a solid foundation, you can weather certain types of pressures, stresses, storms, if you will, if we continue along with that metaphor. So for me, I've identified my foundation as health. Now, I know when I share
Mhm.
this analogy or metaphor with people, like they relate to that very well. Once they really grasp it, it's because without health, what do we have, right? Like when
Yeah.
we're feeling sick, all we can think about is feeling good again. It's
Mhm.
exhausting being sick, and to be able to focus on anybody else, let alone ourselves when we're sick, is really challenging. So, it doesn't matter if you have certain goals financially, professionally, and you have certain family goals and certain personal ambitions. If your health isn't in a good place, it's going to be really hard to attain those. Really hard. And so,
Yeah.
health being the foundation. Now you got four walls and a roof. For me, I like alliteration. Using all S helps me remember it, helps me keep this front of
Yeah.
mind and this concept present. And for me, it's fitness, faith, family, finances. Fitness only because if you want to improve your health and those health markers, the easiest and quickest way to do that is through fitness, through how you
Mhm.
move your body with purpose. It doesn't take a lot, but you got to be consistent and frequent.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, minimum 15 minutes of movement with purpose every day, minimum. And people are like, is that all I
Mhm.
need? And I'm like, it's the least you deserve. Like,
Yeah.
hello, like if that's all you got, that's great. I'm always going to ask people a little bit more if they can, but just to get them
Yeah.
started, 15 minutes a day is good. That's 1% of every 24 hours. 1%. You can't
Mm.
tell me you don't got 1% for yourself. And so that's the fitness piece. And in that would also tie in like nutrition, because that's that
Yeah.
energetic piece that ties into our health and our well-being, also influences that health. Now, finances, listen, we live in a global economy and we need to be financially responsible. And why? Because, gosh, finances are it's a huge stress for pretty much everyone. Pretty much everyone.
Mhm.
I say pretty much because I'm sure there's some people out there
Yeah.
that maybe money doesn't stress them out, and that's great. But I find that the majority of people, especially the people I tend to connect with, even myself, at periods of my life, those finances, if they're not in a good place health wise, you know,
Mhm.
it, it creates a lot of undue stress, which can affect the rest of the integrity of that home or life that you're building. So that's finances. Then we have faith, which is that idea of something greater than ourselves, whatever that may be. For some people, it could be a denominational religion, or
Mhm.
someone like myself, I tend to be more non-denominational, where I look at more of humanity, human beings, a
Yeah.
species, and the greater good that can be created if we all get pointed in the same direction. And ultimately, for my own accountability, it's just every day I'm like, what can I do today that's going to make a positive impact on the world that I live in? So at the end of the life, when I'm there on bed, I'm like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
about to check out. Am I checking out, leaving this place better than it was when I got here?
Mm.
If I can say yes, I've lived a good life, and so there's that intention around the faith piece. And then
Yeah.
family is that includes relationships, connections, can include community, but really the close relationships and connections we have with that in our lives, those are so critical. We are social beings by nature, you know? And if we take out the
Mhm.
social aspect, well, it's a slippery slope. It doesn't lead us to a
Yeah.
great place from a mental health perspective, physical health, emotional health, psychological health, even financial health without that strong connection. So those are those walls. And then the roof is fun because if you're not smiling every
Yeah.
day, there's room for improvement. Okay. There just is. And so that is sort of how I use the 5S to help me prioritize my values and make decisions more quickly. Because when you know your
Mm.
values, you know what you can say yes to, and you know what you're going to say no to. There's no more, let me think about this. Oh, well, maybe. Like, no, if it doesn't align with the things that are important to me and the things that I'm choosing to prioritize and fill my life with, it's an easy no. And if it
Yeah.
does fit in there, that's an easy yes. And it's allowed me to be much more effective and also connect with people much more authentically because it's no more wasted time. It's getting right to the meat of
Mm.
it, trying to find the common connections initially right from the get-go so you can create the bonds right away rather than, sort of pussyfooting around it. Like I just
Yeah.
life is too short. Let's all get pointed in the same direction and have some fun with this, right? And so with that all being said, anybody that's out there, just imagine what your home is, your life that you're developing. You don't have to use the S like I have. Okay, you don't have to. Maybe those resonate with you. Great. If they don't, well, think about your life as a house. You've got a foundation, you've got four walls and a roof. Think about the roof and those four walls as your primary values. Get clear on what those are.
Mm.
Start to build intentionally, the life that you want and start doing the things that align with that. And it's that simple. I know people are like, it can't be that easy. I'm like, it is. You just got to start acting as if. I mean, Tony Robbins has been talking about this for 20, 30 years. A lot of people
Yeah.
have this whole idea, fake it till you make it. And I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, I know that's got a bit of a negative
Yeah.
connotation to it because, it brings up this idea of imposter syndrome and everything else. But really, it's the
Right.
idea is like, start acting as if.
Mm.
You wanted to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. You wanted to go out on your own, Lindsay. I'm sure you started doing certain things that would be important for you to do because you are
Mhm.
being an entrepreneur. It's not like I'm
Mhm.
going to be an entrepreneur. No, I'm going to start being an entrepreneur. Well, what would an
Yeah.
entrepreneur start doing right now? Well, I'd start doing this, this, and this. Great. Start doing those things.
Yeah.
Build the clarity, build the confidence, right? Because it also allows us to procrastinate less when we feel more confident. When we're not feeling confident about what
Mhm.
we're doing, we'll do everything but the thing that we should be doing. And it's awesome. I mean, when we
Yes.
really start to become that self-aware, it's like, whoa, holy, I have a good way of just getting myself out of stuff all the time. Mm.
Yes. Well, I wasn't lying when I said there would be some good nuggets in here for you guys. That was so good. And before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you, Di, what advice do you have for someone who's feeling stuck in their career, but they're scared to make a change, whether that means a new career path or jumping into entrepreneurship?
Wow, great question, Lizzie. Well, I think a lot of this comes down to that idea that there's a gentleman by the name of Joseph Campbell shared this a long time ago. He wrote a book called Power of Myth. People look it up online. You can see lots of interviews with him. He passed away, unfortunately, back in
Mhm.
the 80s, but he's known for his consulting work that he did on the movie Star Wars with George Lucas. People don't know that story,
Hmm.
but he wrote this thing, and we've heard it. Many entrepreneurs have heard this, especially people in the marketing space, the hero's journey. Probably heard the hero's journey. And so Joseph Campbell's the one that coined
Yeah.
that. And when we look at any Hollywood movies, any successful stories or novels, you'll see these different arcs in these stories. And they're very much any one of a number of 8 or 9 different story arcs. But they're all these little journeys. And all of us are on our own journey. And Joseph Campbell uses a question. And he says, are you following your bliss? And
Mm.
what he meant by that is, are you choosing to live a life that allows you to maximize your experience of happiness, fulfillment, and joy? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're not feeling fulfilled, happy, and joy for the life that you're living, I'm going to invite you that there's probably some changes that you're ready to start making. You're probably
Mhm.
thinking, geesh, well, what are the changes I want to start making? That's okay. You're going to have a million and one questions. But you have to get honest with that
Yeah.
first one. Am I following my bliss right now? And if the answer is no, then I invite you start to dip your toe in the water of change. And that could start with just one thing. Maybe you're feeling disconnected with your health, meaning that you're not feeling as energized, you're not feeling as focused,
Mhm.
not feeling as clear on mission, on purpose. I find that often has to do with energy and attention.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I just have no energy." I go, well, no, I think you have energy, but I think it's what what you're paying attention to with that energy. And if you start to reassess where we're investing our energy, you'll start to see things start to happen for you. So do less of the things that are zapping your energy and not making you feel very good about life. Start applying a bit of attention and energy to the things that you've identified are probably going to bring you a little bit closer to some of the changes. We're not looking to make them all, but just start with one. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because with that one little change, all of a sudden, that whole idea of being impossible or not being possible to make changes, you start to realize, wow, I can change and I can change on my terms. And that is a beautiful thing. When you realize that change is possible because you choose it to be, oh, watch out.
Mm.
Because that's when you become unstoppable. Really, like you do. It's just like
Yeah.
you become much more in tune with your own natural resiliency. So don't worry, you will get knocked down, you will fall over,
Mhm.
you will have mistakes, and you will run up against big obstacles. But you know what? You're going to bounce back more quickly every time. Why? Because of that natural resiliency that you're developing. And that's all I
Mhm.
can say. That's what I want to leave you all with. Is just like embrace your resiliency because you all got it. Every single person's got it. I got it. You got it, Lindsay. Everyone's listening or watching this, and you got it. Like, just tap into it, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You know.
Yeah.
And with that, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for the conversation today, Lindsay. Even though at times I feel like I was standing on a soapbox and preaching, but my apologies for that. But thank you so much for
No,
the
it
opportunity
was
today.
it was so good. Thank you for being here, Di. And where can the listeners find you if they want to get connected or if you have any resources, feel
Sure.
free to share them as well.
Well, thanks, Lindsay. I'm most active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Those are my three social platforms I tend to be the most active and consistent on. So I always say, if you want to have a conversation or just reach out, connect, those three
Mhm.
platforms, really easy to find if you can spell my name.
Mhm.
Daimanuel. It's funny nowadays. I recognize my parents were visionaries. This is all before
Yeah.
SEO. Now post Google, I'm like, yeah, my parents were visionaries. Give me something very unique, easy to find, and very
Yes.
unencumbered. But regardless, I also have a website with 1,700 articles on it now. I've been blogging for about 14
Mm.
years. It's all content geared to help people level up in all areas of life. And I always say that's a great place to start. Lots of free resources. I've got my book there as well, and just tons of stuff. And every journey, as cliched it goes, starts with a single step, right? But what
Yeah.
you don't realize is it's actually starts with the choice that we made to take that single step. It all
Mhm.
starts from within. And that's all I want to say is that if you're on that verge of starting, just take that first action. That's it. That's all you
Yes.
got to do.
I
Just
love
that's all you got to do. Right? Right, Lindsay? Like, I mean, really, it's just that first
Yeah,
action. And
absolutely.
it's wild. By doing that one little thing, you open up a whole world of change and you got it started. And I think that's just
Mhm.
awesome. It's just awesome.
Well, thank you. And what was that link for your website?
Oh, just diamanuel.com. Yeah, just my
Okay, perfect.
name.com. Nice and easy.
I'll link all of that in the show notes for you guys. I'll also link the books. I know we mentioned a couple books throughout the conversation, so I'll link those as well. Di, thank you again for being here, sharing your
Thank you.
story, sharing all of your insights. This was such a great conversation, and I know people are going to take a lot away from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. It was a pleasure.